over to you now. All parties are back.
Thank you. Right, thank you for coming back so quickly. We decided that we will grant the licence, but with conditions. Can you please have a show of hands that the licence is granted? Councillor Curtis?
Councillor Curtis, could you put yourself on video, please, so we can see your vote?
Yes, sorry, I'm back on now. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Jack. Can you answer me?
Yeah.
Thank you. There we are. Put a show of hands. Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Now, the officer, a legal officer, will explain to you the conditions.
It may be appropriate actually to explain the legal principles behind the decision. I know that there was Mr. Cornwell certainly in his when he was speaking said that if the license was to be granted, he didn't understand what the legal principles were and would welcome such an explanation. So I feel it's incumbent upon me to explain the law surrounding this area. Basically, the Licensing Act 2003, which is the Act of Parliament that governs all licensable activities, initially advocates a presumption to grant licenses. So the presumption is always that the license must be granted unless there's an overriding factor to the contrary. Now, the need for existing for additional premises or competitions with existing premises is not a factor that can be taken into account. The application needs to be considered on its own merits, and if that application is unsatisfactory because it doesn't promote the licensing objectives, then it should be considered whether it can be made satisfactory by the imposition of conditions on the license, which is effectively what has happened here. And the statutory guidance to the Licensing Act states that beyond the immediate area surrounding the premises, these are matters for the personal responsibility of individuals under the law, and an individual who engages in antisocial behaviour is accountable in their own right. There were issues raised in respect of noise, vermin and drugs. Well, technically the vermin is outside the control of the licensing regime because a restaurant not selling alcohol could be opened without a license. And drug dealing is illegal on any count. And the committee's view is that Mr. Ho provided satisfactory answers to that question in any event. So the conditions that were put on the license is obviously there was concern regarding noise from the outside area. So that would be restricted to a 10 p.m. Closing time. The committee would like a designated smoking area within that beer garden to prevent people congregating on the pavement outside to smoke.
Can I ask a question on that?
No, the decision has been granted. So I'm just explaining the decision.
Okay.
Doors and windows to be closed after 10 p.m. to prevent the emission of noise unless COVID restrictions contradict. There is no bottles or glassware to be emptied after 9:30 p.m. To limit the noise of that activity to the residents. And finally, contact details are to be provided to be circulated to the residents so that if any specific complaints regarding that premises are made, then negotiations between the licence owner and the residents can be facilitated with the contact details. So that's the formal decision in this case.
I'm sorry. The purpose of that was to explain to me the justification for allowing it, and I thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it. And I by no means am accusing you or anyone else of anything here, because I understand you haven't designed that legislation. You're merely extrapolating it. However, I will just say to you now, I'm so deeply depressed about this because it will probably end up me leaving my home, possibly my job, because I do not want to live in this area when the crime gets worse, which it will because of this. I am disinterested in further partaking, which was a consideration of mine after the processes so far that we've taken of getting involved in local politics. I'm deeply depressed. I'm upset. I consider my life to have been made worse by this whole episode, and I don't think the justification has been explained in logical or moral terms, even if they have in legal. I think it's a disgrace. And although, with that said, I wish Mark the best of luck with his business, and I hope it can be as good as it possibly can. But I can only say, even at that level of achievement, it will still drag down the level of my living and my partner's living and the local residents' living. And the councillors, I cannot understand their decision either. I am disgusted with this process. I'm disgusted. I am expected to live, I'm on universal credit at the moment. I'm expected to live on £470 a month. I have no income. I have no savings. I have to live day to day with nuisance and crime, antisocial behaviour. And although it's very well to say that Mr. Ho himself will not be responsible, and it's quite right to say that he himself would not be responsible for the criminal activities of his potential customers, it is ridiculous to say there is no link, no correlation. Causation is a different matter, but no, it was ridiculous to say there's no correlation between the amount of licensed premises on this road and the amount of criminality and nuisance. If that is not clear, then I don't know what is clear. And if that is clear, which it should be to anyone with a brain, then the licensing objectives as set out are ineffective. And not only are they ineffectual, but they are nonsense. Because if you cannot preempt the upsurge of crime and nuisance, then what is the point in that framework in the first place? I cannot tell you how depressed I am by this. I feel like going to see my doctor because of it, actually. Really.
My response.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm afraid we have to finish now because we have to go to the next one. Thank you all.
And that's a despicable response equally to what I just said. You have no humanity. How dare you just tread on what I just said like that? Really, you need to look in the mirror and give your head a wobble. Bye-bye.
Chair, I think that's totally inappropriate.
Yeah. It should not be allowed, Chair.
There you go. No one has ever come back and criticised a decision like this before. And I
Chair, it might be best to leave to close down the meeting and then
Reconvene.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.